Hey there, and welcome to Gyroscope Farm and the Traveling Homesteader. I'm Kathy, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about this nice plant here, lavender. And lavender has a whole host of different properties that are good for us, plus it smells good. And so today we're going to be looking at some lavender and kind of checking into what things we can make with it. So first, this particular variety is called Provence. It's the nice big variety. It is an Italian type of variety. There are English and Italian and Spanish. There's a whole host of different varieties. Now, depending on the variety, you may have an opportunity to use it for different things. I lean towards more of the culinary type so that we have more options for it. And yes, I said that right, culinary. You can use lavender in food. And so today we're going to actually be harvesting some of this to create lavender tinctures, sugar, and some other cool things that we can actually make to help us in a variety of ways. Plus, we're going to show you how to dry them. Hey there, so today with this particular plant, I'm going to be using these clippers. Now too, something that you might want to consider, you can use everyday clippers like these, or you can actually buy a plant specific, a lavender sickle, a little bit of a curve to it that you can actually cut a lot more in one foul swoop than what we're able to with just some clippers. But if you don't have that, this works just as well. So when we cut lavender, at least for me, what I like to do is have the longest stem possible because we're going to do some different things. So I'd rather have more than less. But we don't want to kill the plant, so we want it to come back next year. So we'll cut down to where you'll see some gray. There's some gray. The lavender plant has more of a gray leaf than a green one. And so when I take a small clump of stalks, I'll then just cut them like that and have a nice little grouping. And then I have a particular basket that I'm going to be using here that I'll just lay them in. Now when I lay out my lavender, I'm going to have them all going the same direction. So the heads will be at one end and the stems will be at the other. That way they're a little bit more organized, and when I use them for whatever I'm going to be doing, drying, putting them in a jar for a tincture, they're just all in the same order and it works out easier. So with that in mind, we're going to continue clipping and putting our lavender in. Now, so you know, we'll also have the opportunity to see another variety. There's some pink lavender I have right down here that is just beyond what I normally do for harvesting. But when we look at lavender, we want to make sure that the right time for harvesting is when we see one or two maybe of the flowers on the bud. We don't want them all out, because the potency then, the more flowers that come out, the less potent it is. And so if you want to have higher smell or higher medicinal purpose, you want to have less flowers out. So that's a good thing. And you may see that there's some bees flying around, and that's another thing that you can do, is have lavender honey. And with my beehive, I'm hoping that this lavender will have a little bit of an influence on my honey that my bees are collecting for. And before I leave my herb garden, I just wanted to point out this is another variety of lavender. It's a pink variety, which is actually rather pleasant. You can see there's a nice big bumblebee right there taking advantage of the flowers. But this particular variety comes a little bit earlier than the Italian that I have been picking on. But it's nice in bouquets, and it's nice for weddings if you want to use it instead of rice. So this is the plant I just harvested. It took me about 10 minutes to get all of it off. And this is my container filled with what I just harvested. But I also picked a little bit of our pink lavender so you could see the difference in length and color from the pink and the purple, the two different varieties we have. Now that we've had a chance to cut our one plant down and have some time to look at what we have, I wanted to point out two of the varieties that we happen to have. Now, with lavender, there are 4 basic varieties, and within those varieties, different species. There's the Portuguese, English, French, and Spanish. And within those types of varieties, they can be harvested at slightly different times of the year. What I'd mentioned before is that at least with this one, that's the it's the Provence variety from, I want to say it's the French version, but we can see here that it ends up having some little flowers. Sorry for the shakes, but you can see that some of the buds have flowers and some do not, and that's okay because the fewer the flowers on this particular variety, the better. Um, they can be harvested usually late July or late June, early July for the strongest scent and flavor if you're going to use them. Now, the English, which is this pink variety, has a very tiny short stem. That's like the length of the stem. The Provence can get very long. In fact, probably too long for almost too long. You can kind of see here the difference in length between the 2 varieties. And in the case of this, and this pink variety is an English variety, and it's actually gone a little bit beyond harvest time, but I'll use it just for dried lavender and use it for sachets or something like that. Um, and so, even if your plant has gone beyond what might be considered good harvest time, you can still use it in some different things, but probably not for everything. So today we're going to be looking at a couple of different things, up to about 5 different things that you can actually make with this very lavender here. And like I mentioned, so first off, like with this pink lavender, this English lavender that we're going to do, that I have, I'm just going to set this aside and I'm actually just going to let it dry. And so I'll leave this particular batch to dry loose like this. And with that, I'll just end up making sure it has air that it can get around it. And it'll dry out. You'll know when it's all dry, it's kind of crispy. And then you'll slowly but surely, just one by one, slide off the flowers, and you'll see that they kind of there's even a little bud there, and that's what you can use in something like a sachet or in a potpourri of some sort if you choose. So that's one way to dry it, is just to set it aside loose in an area where it can just dry out. Another thing that you can do is just something plain and simple, and I'll take some of these taller stems of this particular variety, the French variety that we like. I happen to really like this just because it's so diverse, and it's kind of my speed as far as scent. And realize too that lavender has different scents depending on which variety you get. And they actually can be different colors as well. But this is as straightforward and simple. If you want it to kind of a simple drying way, but to keep it pretty in your house, I happen to like glass bottles that are a little bit older, and I just take mine and put it in the bottle. And I don't add any water to it because I don't want it to. You can to keep it kind of fresher longer, but I also want it to dry. So I don't necessarily need water in the bottle. And I kind of took a little bit too much for this particular bottle, but just put it in, and it's plain and simple, just like that. And it helps, as I have it by my window, it'll scent the air as it comes through on a summer day, which is really rather pleasant. So that's one way you can do that. Another way you can actually put these together and help them dry is either taking handy dandy rubber bands, or you can take twine, like a sisal twine, and all you do is take a grouping of it. This will be a little bit larger group because I don't mind having it this large. But remember, the larger the grouping of stems, the longer it'll take the inner part to dry. So with that in mind, you want to kind of have it probably no bigger than this, which is about that much, about an inch around. And so, what you can do is just take a rubber band, and um, you can do this in a couple of ways. Just twist it around like this, and make sure it's nice and tight, because as it dries, it will shrink and you'll start to have them fall down. So this is one way to do it. And at some point, you may want to take another um, rubber band and put it in, because you'll want to hang this in some way. And so if you put the rubber band in on the side, kind of like this, um, it'll allow you to hang on a line. And when you do this, oops, I broke my rubber band, but easy enough, you can just fix it by twisting it and hanging it this way. So you can actually do it in a couple of different ways. So one, you can twist around like you would a ponytail, or you could twist around and just hang it like that. And then you can take a paper clip and also hang it hang it up on a line. Another way, like I mentioned, that you can dry this is taking like a twine and wrapping it nice and tight and creating a loop and hanging it up on the line. Now, several years ago, I worked with a woman who wanted to have lavender plants at her home, and we together harvested lavender and made it in different ways. And we did this in a couple of different ways for ease of use. And so when we do these, that's just how we ended up doing it. There's probably a number of ways else you could do it, but this was what was easy for us. Now, the next item. So now that we've put flowers into just a vase, plain and simple, you can use them with fresh flowers. You can put them in a bunch like this to then dry, just to hang and dry for other things. And we'll get back to that in just a minute. Another thing that you can do is make a tincture. Now, this is what I harvested this specifically for, was to use most of this for a tincture. Now, a lavender tincture you can use in a variety of ways. I happen to use it on cuts and blemishes, and I happen to have some dry skin on my palm right now that once this is all set up, I'll actually dab it on my skin. But there's tinctures, and then there's oils. Now, lavender oil is a pressed item. And that's a little bit different process, that you have to put it through a big unit that actually presses the oil out of the plant. That's something that I've not learned how to do, only because it's like beyond me. But the tincture is not an oil, but it's with alcohol. I happen to be using vodka. And that you use in either 80 proof or 100 proof alcohol that you literally soak the lavender in. Or the other thing that's the same process but with an oil is essentially, it's not necessarily an essential oil, but it's a bit of an infused oil. And that is that you use a carrier oil like olive oil or grapeseed oil to help, and that you can use in a similar way as a tincture. So this, what I'm showing you now, is you can use as a tincture, as a lavender tincture, or lavender oil. But a pressed oil is what comes directly from the plant, not what the plant soaks in. Just so you know, there is a bit of a difference between the two. And I just found out today that if you want to get 30 milliliters of a lavender tincture, 30 milliliters, it's not even a third of a cup. It's actually a 0.12 of a cup. Is $32. And I was like, dang, that's a stash of cash. Basically, what we're going to make is far more for far less. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to literally take this jar, just open it up. Now, with this variety, you can do this in a couple of different ways. You can either do it the way I'm going to do it, and I'll show you that in a second. Or you can cut them down. You can actually take scissors um, or just any sort of cutting material. Sorry about the fly. um, or any, you can take any sort of cutting utensil to kind of mush up the plant, and that'll work too. Now, you can also make a smaller amount than this, but the tinctures, the lavender tincture that I will use, I'll actually use in multiple things. I have had some horses, and I found that there's a basically a non-chemical fly spray that I was able to put together that really worked on my horses, and so that involves a lot of the lavender tincture. So that's why I started making more, was because of that lavender fly spray, or the fly spray, the natural fly spray that I made. But the way that I'm going to do this today is literally just holding on to the jar, and I'm going to take this lavender and just bend it and break it. And I am going to bend it in a way to kind of have it be mashed up a little bit. And what that does is it breaks things up so that the lavender can be best soaked into. We're gonna take this, and you can see in the first batch that I put in there, and that's just fine. It's just kind of mangled in there. And all I'm gonna do is fill this up with the maimed and broken lavender. And so by kind of crimping it up, it allows me to get kind of more out of my plant. And you can use the stems and all. Some recipes may say just to use the tops, but the stems have value too. So that's why I'm going to be putting all of it in there. And I will wrinkle some of them and bend tips in different ways. And so that's kind of how that goes. And you can see I'm just slowly but surely filling it up. I'm not necessarily pressing it all in, but I am stashing some in. So then, as I get this last little bit, again, I'm just going to wrinkle it and bend it and make sure that it's kind of macerated, you might say. It's like when you macerate mint for a drink, like if you're going to have a mint julep or something like that. So you want to be able to get what you can out of the plant. So now I have a little bit more room in here that I'll probably put a little bit more plants in, so that way I can kind of best use my space. And with that in mind, there we go. So I filled this up as much as I pretty much want, and then the last thing, and this is about as simple and easy as you get. So in this jar, I'm going to take, and for those of you that might know me, you might be surprised, but I don't drink alcohol. I never have. And so I actually went into the liquor store today and said, I want some vodka. And I ended up getting, this happens to be Smirnoff. It was about $34. I kind of don't know if that's a good price or not, to be honest. Smaller amounts are lesser, but for this size is what I wanted. And so I'm actually going to just wipe up some of the extra flowers and put them in. But all I'm going to do now is make sure all the extra parts are in the jar, open it up, and pour it in. So this really is as simple as it gets. Just pour it all in, and then once it's all in, we're going to cover it up and make sure. I'm actually going to close the jar. I have a lid for this large jar, and basically let it soak for about 2 to 4 weeks. By letting it soak for that long, it will change the color of the alcohol. So, to be honest, I'm not sure that you'd want to actually drink this once it's actually done perking. If you want to save some aside, if you are of that sort that likes vodka, I'd save it aside at this point. But I'm going to just use all of it because I don't drink. But notice the smell of the alcohol now, and then notice the smell when you actually end up taking it out. You'll start to smell the scent of lavender as it perks. And it'll be kind of an amazing thing. And by doing that, you'll see that how it's changing. So now that I've gotten that all in, you can actually see in our jar that this amount, and this was, let me see, I don't want to say it's a gallon. It's gluten-free, which is interesting. It's not quite 2 liters. It's a 1.75 liter. And interestingly enough, just because of where I've been before, it looks like it's kosher, which is kind of interesting. So this bottle was, like I said, just over $34 for 1 3/4 liters, almost 2 liters. And it is now in this jar at about here. Okay, so it's just over half of this. Now, I probably would be wise to have gotten a little bit more and filled it up all the way to the top. But this will, I can also put a weight on it to help press it down in. But then all I need to do, put the lid on and let it perk for 2 to 4 weeks. Preferably in a darker space. So in a cabinet someplace, in a closet. Now at this point, you can do the very same thing with oil. The oil will probably be a little bit more money. And you'll want to use something that's a carrier oil. And with that oil, you can actually either cook with it or use it as a medicinal purposes for skin irritations and that sort of thing. The process is still the same if you use oil or vodka, just a little bit different product. The only other thing you're going to want to do is, it's been suggested that you use grapeseed oil if you're going to use it because the grapeseed oil doesn't have as much oiliness. It can absorb into your skin a little bit quicker, and it's just a lighter smell, lighter scent, or lighter flavor even, than something like olive oil. Olive oil has its own scent that could affect things in another way. So just as a little FYI. Then the other thing that we can do is once your lavender has dried, you can even make essentially a whole host of other things. You can make sachets, you can make bath salts, you can make just a whole host of different things. But something else that you can make that is a relatively easy thing that you can do at this stage is lavender sugar. So for the sugar, it's pretty simple and straightforward. But did you know that you could actually make edible items out of lavender? And it's true. You can do a whole host of things with lavender, from lavender tea to lavender lemonade, even fudge. I've had some fudge. And what we're going to do now is just lavender infused sugar. And then we're going to have a couple of bonuses for you that you can even have using what we have in lavender. So all we're going to do is take a couple of the heads of lavender, and so we're going to get some that have few buds open. But then if you have some buds that are open, this is where to use them. So we're going to use a couple of these items, and we want to take them and kind of cut them at different lengths so that it can get throughout the sugar. So I might take a couple like this and just simply take my scissors and cut, okay? But for this part, for one of our bonuses, I want you to save these on the side. So for these, we're going to just place them in our jar, and you can kind of see that that length kind of goes up pretty tall. So we're going to take a couple of more, and we're going to cut them at a bit shorter length. This way, you'll have the flowers going throughout the sugar that we pour in, and you'll get the infused sugar a little bit more evenly distributed. So again, we're going to put these together, and this time we're just going to align up the flower heads, and for this part, we're just going to go a little bit closer to the top of the head, and we're going to go boom, and again, save these for another moment. So you're going to plunk them right in our jar. You can see that they're kind of down towards the bottom. The only thing I might do is put one more set in to fill in. There seems to be a little bit of a gap on this side that I think if we put some more in there, it'll be very helpful. So I just might take a few more, and again, way simple. Part of the reason why I'm showing you guys these things is just to make something simple and easy. And the cool part is with lavender, you can grow this right in your own backyard. You can grow it on your deck. You can grow it in your window. So the particular plant that we have, that I took all this lavender off, it was one plant, is about 15 years old. You can actually get lavender off plants within the first year to 2 years after planting. So you don't have to wait as long as I did, but it does come back, and it does allow you to get more lavender as you go. So if you take good care of your lavender plants, no matter where you put it, whether in a pot, you can put it on your patio, in your house, in your garden, as long as the plant's feet aren't soaked in water and has a means of draining out, you're good. And then you take the time to trim it. So now that we've gotten the lavender in our jar, and again, it could be a jar of your choice. It could be an older, like a tomato jar that you have, or a tomato sauce jar. Could be a brand new canning jar, just as long as your jar is clean. And generally speaking, using glass jars or stainless steel is probably better. Using plastic or other things just isn't all that great. But with that in mind, all you're going to do is take your sugar. Try not to spill it on yourself like I am. And then simply pour into your jar. And once we get this all done, you can actually take this and just let it sit for a couple of weeks. Well, I'd say a week to 10 days, and you'll be able to have nice infused sugar that you can use in a whole host of things like teas or even lemonade. I know that little kids like to have this sort of thing in cookies and different things like that. So again, let it shake down. I might even put a couple more pieces, just flower heads right at the top, so that it has a little bit more ability. So just those three down here, and then cover it up. And there you go. The only other thing on any one of these things that it's in a jar, like our tincture or even our sugar, I would just put something on here of a start date, so you then know when to take it all out. So now that we have the sugar, the tincture, we have some fresh flowers in a jar for our living room. We even have some other various cool items. This bonus item that I'm going to show you, simply with the stems. Now you're like, what the heck, they're stems? How valuable can they be? Well, if you have a yen for camping, or if you have just that urge to start a fire, these are great as fire starters. And all I'm going to do is take, again, the twine that you've probably already had, and simply just simply knot them together. And you can do it in a variety of creative ways. You can be as simple or extravagant as you like. The goal here being, you just want them to stay together. And this is another way that you can, I just made a knot and then started wrapping around the stems. Now here with this too, you can put various other types of herbs here on this, so you can even have it as part of a smoking agent on the barbecue, so you can have a more floral taste to your meats if you want to smoke in that way. You can also use them as, I want to call them a punk, but that's probably not right. If you want to have something to, I guess, smudge. If you want to smudge your house, lavender, herbs, you can. This is another way you can wrap together something to purify your home, like the Native Americans did with different herbs. So now that I've wrapped this with my twine, I'm just gonna do that, cut it off, and knot it with the other end. And that's all. And then now I have this simple item that I can use as a fire starter for either campfire or my wood stove in the winter. So again, this is rather simple stuff, and there you go. So I'm going to set that aside, and I can set that aside with several items like that. So if you have any stems that you just are finding that you're going to throw away, put them together like that, and you can use them as a fire starter. Or even speaking of that and the barbecue, you can even use these as skewers. You can, put chunks of meat or just anything you like, and the lavender scent and will be infused into the meat as well. And as one last bonus item for you, again, with everyday items that you have in your home, you can even take basically a scent or a kind of a room deodorizer with baking soda. Handy dandy baking soda and lavender makes a great room deodorizer. So in my case, I've already done it. I've already put it in this pot. This was just a pot that a friend had made, and it with the holes, it actually goes out into the room naturally. So I've already put. You can see in here that the baking soda has already been put in there. All I have to do now is take my lavender, and I can either kind of squish it up like I did before with the tincture, or I can just cut off the heads and kind of piece them in a little bit, set aside the stems, right, and then I can create a room deodorizer that will infuse the air as it goes. So this is another way that you can kind of use lavender in your own home. Now, a lot of people think that they have to have a lot of something, but a little goes a long way. And so, with that in mind, this one plant now has given us fire starters, tinctures, an oil that you can even do, dried, part of a floral arrangement, a room diffuser, and even sugar for teas and for other foods that you may want to use, like for baking. So this is a lot of different stuff that you can use, and that's the cool part to self-reliance, is being able to know what to get and use the most. Now, not everyone's going to like lavender, and that's okay. I have a limited ability to be around lavender, and then I started getting headaches. So if you don't like lavender, don't use it, but find another herb you might like. Maybe lemon balm or rosemary or even basil. Those are all good items that you can grow simply and easily and use in a variety of ways in your home. So leave a comment below to show how you've learned how to use lavender and maybe what you've used it in. And I ask you to continue to check back to the Traveling Homesteader and subscribe as much as you can and share with others. And I look forward to seeing you again. And thanks so much for coming by and checking out what we've done with lavender today.